let's move on now, and to a large extent, we're talking politics today. As we all know, it's election season, and later this year, South Africa will be heading for their polls. And we have a number of new political parties. One of those is Change Starts Now. I'm now joined by the leader of the party, Roger Jardine. Roger, it feels strange to me, having interviewed you as a CEO and talking mining stuff and all those other things to do with construction, and now switching and talking about politics. What happened? How did the flip come about?
Well, thank you very much. It's good to see you again. I guess I belong to a generation of South Africans that have just grown increasingly worried about the state of our nation and wanting to step forward and to be part of the solution. So I'm here today precisely, based on a personal journey. I think it's time more South Africans step forward. Our country is heading in the wrong direction, and we need all hands to the wheel. And I think working with other people, able South Africans, we can turn it around. I mean, there is a way out of this, and it will depend on all of us being prepared to step onto this terrain, because my personal conclusion is if we don't fix the politics of this country, we're just going to have more of the same. And by fixing the politics of the country, what I mean is we need more people in the room with a diverse set of experiences and skills, and who actually know how to get things done. So I'm not a career politician, as you've pointed out, but I'm a very patriotic South African, and I look forward to being part of those South Africans who want to make this country the truly amazing country that it can be.
Yeah. So let's give you some shape, because as I said, you are new. So people want to know what kind of economic policies you would propose if you manage to get into government.
So we've just done a baseline survey of 9,000 South Africans. So it's not coming with what we think South Africa needs. It's listening to South Africans to tell us about the South Africa that they want and the South Africa that they deserve. The number one issue that South Africans feel is important is the issue of employment. And everywhere I go, people are talking about jobs, jobs, and jobs. And so at the cornerstone of any economic policy, it has to be, how do we get out of this unemployment rut that we are in? So, for example, we know that over 10 years ago, the National Development Plan was published. In that plan, and here's the thing, and this is why I feel so passionate about the fact that we can make a difference. That plan over 10 years ago said that if we increase infrastructure investment to GDP to 30%, we can reduce unemployment to the 10% mark by 2030. It is now 2024. We're sitting at the 14% mark. Kenya is at about 20%. And these things must happen and should happen. And so a huge infrastructure investment cycle will have to start by the new government. And we're ready to focus our attention there, because we know that's how we fundamentally begin to address the issue of joblessness. Yeah. Last night, the president again gave South Africans the impression that solving load shedding is on the horizon. We've been told at various times, wait 12 months, wait 18 months. We know that with about 5 or 6 measures, including rooftop solar, rolling out the transmission grid, getting a stable supply of energy, if we're lucky, we'll solve this problem in 3 to 4 years' time.
Sure.
Now, there's nothing in the track record of this government to suggest that there's the will, nor are they able to actually do that, because we keep getting mired in the shenanigans of party politics, and the country suffers as a result. Absolutely. What we need is a government that is firmly focused on the people of this country, a government that says, we see you, and we are going to focus on the key things that matter to you. Yeah. And just by fixing Eskom alone, our GDP growth can go from around the 1% or so mark to 2.5%. Sure. And that will go along with dealing with the ports and so on.
Absolutely.
So our economic infrastructure is in disarray, and we have to start there and get things done.
And we need to get things done. And I think the president agrees with you because they ran a X poll yesterday, where they were asking people, what do you think are the key things? And jobs came tops, as you said in your own survey as well. But I wanted I understand you're short for time, and also we don't have the time to give you to be able to outline everything that you stand for. So I'm going to be a little bit reductionist here and ask whether you are a capitalist, a communist, a socialist. What are you? When people think about change starts now, what should they think about? How should they view you?
So I think this is exactly the problem with South African politics today. As you pointed out, I mean, you and I met when I was the CEO of major corporations, but I wasn't born in Sandton. You know, I was born in a place called Riverlea, and my family moved to Eldorado Park, and I've worked through a corporate career. My starting point in 2024 is that we mustn't be held back by labels. Our starting point cannot be, are you a capitalist or are you a socialist? Our starting point has to be, what is the best way to solve the problems of this country? Now, we know that we have a situation of extreme wealth and extreme poverty. We also know that people around the world, including South Africa, are increasingly becoming disgruntled with democracy because they see it not working for them. So we're going to need a strong agreement, a compact between the extremely rich and the extremely poor on the basis of social solidarity. And what that means is, with our state basically being hollowed out, the balance sheet of SA Inc. being in a very poor state, we will have to leverage private sector capital and private sector expertise so that we can get those goods and services to people in the short to medium term. This is not to advocate wholesale privatization, because there's certain things that are the domain of the public sector and will always be. But we do need urgent help for the people of this country. And that means you'll see a much stronger working relationship between the private sector and the public sector. There are some measures in place, and the president has some work streams underway. It's quite something to see trails of CEOs going to the union buildings to work on problems, and at the same time, a minister in the presidency will denounce the private sector as treasonous and trying to undermine our democracy. So there's no room for an ideological schizophrenia around the role of the private sector and the public sector in coming together on the basis of social solidarity to solve those problems. So no, there's no capitalism or socialism. If you're looking for a label, it's probably more social democratic, but I would stay away from labels. Let's focus on how do we solve these problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as I said, so time was of great essence, so I understand, and so to an extent, I had to resort to that one. But do let me know when you need to go as well, because I understand you're catching a plane. Yeah. I had one more question, though, to you, and I'm hoping you can answer this one before you go. If you were the president last night, what would you have focused on? And in part, I'm inviting you to share with us what your election manifesto is looking like.
So the first thing I would have done is I would not have talked about the state of South Africa 30 years ago versus today. I thought it was completely disingenuous to talk about what happened in 1994 and what's happening in 2024. I think that's part of our democratic discourse. If I were the president, I would account to the people what I said I would do when I started my term and what I've achieved over that 5-year term. I wouldn't try to fudge the numbers by going 30 years back. And so I think the spirit of the presidency is, first of all, to take citizens into his or her confidence and to speak honestly about things that have worked and things that have not worked. And that, I think, is about leadership. I also would have set out an agenda for the country. I would have talked about who we are as South Africans, who we want to be, what brings us together to form this beautiful tapestry of diverse people and work towards being and forging a common consciousness as South Africans. We forge that consciousness around major events like the World Cup and so on. But for us to be competitive and to work together as South Africans, we need to talk more about that. I would have set out an economic policy for the country. I would have explained how I intend to undo this mass joblessness facing our country and by when. I would have talked about the fact that millions of South Africans go to bed hungry. Our president told us last night that from the standpoint of poverty, we're in better shape. We know that's not true. We know that people are dying of hunger in the Eastern Cape, where I visited 2 weeks ago and had a town hall. We know that 2 mothers there were so desperate they took to killing their own children because of their dire circumstances. I would have shown sympathy for them and the millions of people who are suffering from poverty and malnourishment. I would have talked about the fact that South Africans feel very unsafe in their homes, and when they leave and drive in their cars. I would have talked about strong measures to look at what's working and what's not working with our police services and how we can improve that. And lastly, I would not have trivialized such an important matter, such as universal health coverage, by asking the House for a pen to sign a document that purports to be healthcare reform, but we know seeks to create an SOE. An SOE, we know the state of SOEs and what needs to be done, but that National Health Insurance Bill wants to aggregate 600 billion rand into an SOE to reduce healthcare coverage for all South Africans. 90% of our people go to public healthcare institutions for health. I would have told them that my priority will be to fix all public hospitals so that they have medicine, they have food, they have linen, they have blankets, and that people can go there to be cared for. I would have told them that the nurses who work under those conditions should be treated as our heroes and heroines because they work under very difficult circumstances. I would have said to South Africa, I see you, I feel your pain, and I am here to work very actively to make sure that your life improves. Sure. I would not have done what the president did last night. It was very disappointing.
Sure. Roger, I thank you for that. Are you able to take one more question?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I wanted to ask you about the range of opinion polls that we have seen on the possible outcomes of the elections next year. And I wanted to put it to you. I haven't seen your name coming up on the leaderboard. What do you say to those?
Yeah, so we are relatively new. All of the polls that have been released so far before we were launched on the 10th of December. And so in the coming months, I think you should be looking out for that. I think that's a function of timing at this stage.
Absolutely. And to be fair, opinion polls in South Africa, if I have to say, have not been very accurate. We all know about the death of the ANC that's been projected over many years, and it hasn't happened yet. Roger, thank you, and good luck in those elections.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So that's Roger Jardine, leader of Change Starts Now. Roger, as I said, has been a corporate leader, and I have interviewed several times when he was CEO of Avenge. He was chairperson of First Rand, the largest, one of the largest financial institutions in the country, previously as well CEO of Kagiso Media, and now venturing into politics. Necessary step, he says, because the country is in a dire situation and the trajectory needs to change. Before we go, let me quickly give you a